And our opening words are adapted from words by Calvin Dame. Come, let us be joined in seeking the aspirations of the heart. Come, let us be joined in giving voice to those melodies which can heal the wounded soul. Come, let us be joined in listening for that voice that calls us again and again to engage with the world and to be blessed by it. This prayer, written by Eric Sherry a number of years ago, seems very apt this morning. It's called a peacemaking prayer. The history is complex. The politics are intense. The fear and anger are overwhelming, and the future is unclear. But glimpses of a hopeful vision will not be bombed into oblivion by anyone. In prayer, we call to mind the peacemakers, neighbors of differing faiths, with different histories, with different politics, with different emotions, who find room for each other in their hearts, in their dreams, and in their lives. Those who hold firmly to a vision of peace and justice anywhere in the world, but especially today in Palestine and Israel. Spirit of life and love, be present with all who are suffering terribly from the violence in Gaza. Lift up the hearts of those who fear and inspire courage among the peacemakers. Be present with political leaders, ensuring a retreat from violence and a procession toward the peace table. Guide the hands of all those who are caring for the injured, the hungry, and the grieving, and open our own hearts to compassion. Remind us of our complicity and responsibility, and lead us toward generous engagement, always towards a vision of peace. Amen. Our reading this morning will be read by Anna Everett.
Our reading this morning is adapted from the Children's Story Garden, a Quaker story collection from the 1920s. The Three Sieves. One day, a little boy ran indoors from school and called out eagerly, "Oh, Mother, what do you think of Tom Jones? I have just heard that." His mother interrupted him. "Wait a minute, my boy," she said. "Have you put what you heard through the 3 sieves before you tell it to me?" "Sieves, Mother?" asked the boy. "What do you mean?" "Well, the first sieve is called truth. Is it true?" "Well, I don't really know," said the son. "But Bob Brown said that Charlie told him that Tom—" "That's very roundabout," said his mother. "What about the second sieve, kindness? Is it kind?" "Kind? No, I can't say it is kind." "Now the third sieve, necessary. Will it go through that? Must you tell this tale? Will it help?" "No, Mother," he admitted, "it won't help." "Well then, my boy, if it is not necessary, not kind, and perhaps not even true, let's allow this story to die." And that's just what they did.
I've been thinking about the power of words lately. Particularly, I've been contemplating how we communicate culturally about the power of words, how we pass on wisdom about the best ways to communicate, how we call attention to hurtful ways of communicating, how we train ourselves to be good communicators. Some little sayings came to mind that we teach to children about how to protect ourselves against the words of others. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I'm rubber, you're glue. Everything you say bounces off me and sticks to you. Remember those? I spent some time this week wondering how those sayings first came into being, but it's not hard to imagine. An upset child comes crying to a parent or older sibling after someone on the schoolyard has called him names. Or maybe a rumor was spread about him. The child is heartbroken. And the kind-hearted grandmother or uncle tries to make him feel better by equipping him with a saying to diminish the power of words. And although they do their best with the little rhymes, they do so because they know that words do have power. Words do hurt, intentionally or unintentionally. They know, too, that sharing information gives us power, that speaking the quickest or the loudest gives us power. And it's not just clever little sayings that we have developed to express our feelings about the power of words. Cultures and religions all over the world have developed stories to tell, to teach lessons about the power of words and how we use them. The reading that Anna read earlier is a Quaker teaching story. The Christian tradition has a lot to say about gossiping. In his letter to the Thessalonians, the Apostle Paul advises his community to make it your goal to live a quiet life, minding your own business and working with your hands. Proverbs 11 tells us, "Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered." In the Islamic tradition, these sayings are attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. When three persons are together, two of them must not whisper to each other without letting the third hear. When you speak, speak the truth. Perform when you promise. It is not worthy of a speaker of truth to curse people. Perhaps my favorite teaching story on the power of words comes from the Jewish tradition. I'll share a version of it adapted from a story written by Shoshana Brombaker. In a small town in Eastern Europe lived a wonderful, kind-hearted man with just one weakness. He talked too much about other people. He could not help himself. Whenever he heard a story about somebody he knew, and sometimes about someone he did not know, he just had to tell it to his friends. Since he was in business, he heard quite a lot of rumors and stories. He loved the attention he got when he shared the stories and was delighted when they laughed because of the way he told them. Sometimes he embellished, just a little, for effect. Other than this one weakness, he really was a kind, good-hearted man. Every once in a while, he would feel a tinge of discomfort after telling a story. Not regret exactly, but just a little unsettling feeling in the pit of his stomach. He usually shook it off quickly. In any case, the stories he shared had really happened, hadn't they? Most of his stories were just innocent and entertaining, weren't they? One day, he found out something juicy about another businessman in town. Of course, he felt compelled to share what he knew with his colleagues. Who told it to their friends? Who told it to people they knew? Who told it to their wives? Who spoke with their friends and their neighbors? Soon it spread around town like wildfire, until finally the news made it back to the man the story was about. Distraught, this man ran to the rabbi of the town and cried and complained that he was ruined. Nobody was going to do business with him after this. His good name and his reputation were gone. Now, this rabbi had a feeling he might know who to ask about this. So he summoned the man who loved to tell stories. If it was not he who started them, he might at least know who did. When the nice man with the weakness for gossip heard from the rabbi about how devastated his colleague was, he felt truly sorry. He honestly had not considered such a big deal to tell the story, because after all, it was true. The rabbi could check it out for himself if he wanted. Hearing this, the rabbi sighed. True, not true. That really makes no difference, he told the man. You just cannot tell stories about people. This is all lashon hara, slander. Now the man who started the rumor began to feel really sorry. What can I do to make it undone, he sobbed. I will do anything you say. The rabbi looked at him. Do you have any feather pillows in your house? Yes, said the man, but he was truly confused. Do you think my colleague could use a new pillow? He asked. No, said the rabbi. Just bring me one. The man was mystified, but he returned a bit later to the rabbi's study with a nice fluffy pillow under his arm. The rabbi led the man out of his study and up many stairs, then opened a door at the top of the stairs. They were on the roof of the building. The man grew a little nervous. When the rabbi took out a knife, he became downright scared. But then the rabbi handed him the knife and gestured to the pillow. Cut it open, he ordered. But Rabbi, it will make a mess. Do as I say, said the rabbi. So the man cut the pillow. A cloud of feathers came out. They covered the man with the knife and the rabbi. They landed on the roof and fluttered into the air. Just then a big gust of wind came and lifted the remaining feathers into the air. The sky was full of them. The men watched the fluffy white wisps float over the nearby buildings and down into the streets. It was kind of beautiful, actually. When they had watched the feathers for several minutes, the rabbi turned to the man. Now, he said, bring me back all the feathers and stuff them back into your pillow. The man stared at the rabbi in disbelief. That's impossible, Rabbi. The ones here on the roof I might get, yes, but the ones that flew out into the city are gone. Rabbi, I can't possibly get them all back. Yes, said the rabbi, and nodded gravely. That is how it is. Once your words leave your mouth, you do not know where they will end up. They fly on the wings of the wind, and you can never get them back. He ordered the man to apologize to the person about whom he had told the story. It was difficult, but it was the least he could do. He ordered him to apologize to the people to whom he had told the story, making them a part of his mistake too. It was embarrassing. But with each apology, another person learned the lesson of lashon hara and a pillow full of feathers. When the UU congregation of Central Nassau and Garden City, New York, was facing a challenging time, things at church became pretty stressed. As their minister, Rev. Hope Johnson, put it, they were not being their best selves. Then, more than ever, how they communicated with one another became pivotal. Rev. Hope turned to her committee on ministry to help. One person told the group about some buttons she had seen in another congregation that said, "Is it true? Is it kind? Will it help?" Just like the 3 sieves, Right then, the Committee on Ministry committed to creating buttons like that and to wearing them. After a few weeks of wearing the buttons, they asked board members to join them, then other congregational leaders. Soon, everyone was talking about the buttons, and everyone wanted one. Reverend Hope and the Committee on Ministry led a worship service about the buttons and talked about the ideals of how thoughtful people can communicate with and about each other, even when they disagree. They gave out the buttons. While I don't feel we are facing a particularly challenging time in our congregation with rumor mills or infighting, the proverbial grapevine is always something that we need to be conscious of. Sometimes we may need to prune it a little. Especially in small towns like Provincetown, Truro, and Wellfleet, news travels fast. Much of it true, some of it not. Some is benign, some malicious, some truly interesting and informative, some pretty boring. I am continually surprised what details of daily life make their rounds. So when we become recipients of this information, we have to decide what to do with it. And when we are confronted with hurtful or upsetting words, we have to decide how to respond. It's actually good to take a look at these behavioral norms when we are not in crisis over them. That's when we can be most thoughtful and least reactive. So this morning, I encourage us to take stock of how we communicate with one another, not just in this meeting house community, but in the Provincetown community, online, at our workplaces, in our families, in our romantic relationships. We can ask ourselves, what am I getting out of passing on information when it comes to me? Is there any harm that might be done? How do I communicate with the people around me? Do I react quickly? Do I let things brew and simmer until I build up a steam? When I'm annoyed with someone, do I speak to them directly or hold a venting session with sympathetic listeners? How would I like to communicate? As we begin to think more deeply about the power of our words, we can start making use of those 3 sieves. Is it true? Is it kind? Will it help? We can, before we get into any trouble at all, explore what it feels like not to pass on information that we hold, even when we are tempted. We can practice taking a few deep breaths before reacting. We can monitor the tone of our voices in disagreements. We can extricate ourselves from conversations that we don't want to be party to. We can be brave and speak up when we think we can be kind and helpful. And we can hold each other accountable for the ways we talk to each other and about what. Reverend Nancy Arnold, who began a button campaign in her congregation, the UU Fellowship of Huntington, preached, "I believe that some of the hurt we inflict on each other comes out of thoughtlessness and not paying attention to what comes from our mouths. We are not intentionally hurtful, but we are also not being intentionally kind either. By asking the questions before speaking, is it true? Is it kind? Will it help? We become conscious of what we are saying and doing." And Reverend Hope's congregation in Garden City, things are better now. Great, actually. And they've created a whole button ministry, spreading the tool that has helped them to create an intentionally kinder congregation. They wear their buttons everywhere, and they give them away. If someone asks them about the button they are wearing, they explain why they are wearing it, and then they just unpin it and give it to the person who asked. Then they get a new one. They've shared the buttons with other UU congregations, synagogues, and community groups, and they have begun collecting heartwarming stories of how the buttons have transformed interactions and relationships. When Reverend Hope handed out the buttons at her interfaith clergy group, one of the rabbis started to cry. His father used to say the same thing, he said. I meant to bring a button up here today to show you. I was going to say, and this is what the button looks like. But I also was going to say, and they've shared them with us. So my second invitation to you this morning, in addition to thinking deeply about what we communicate with each other and how, is to try wearing the button for a while. See if it changes how you use the power of your words. See if anyone asks you about it. And if you want to, go ahead and give it to them if they do. We can always get more. I've invited Reverend Hope to come visit us in Provincetown one day. When she does, we will have stories ready for her of how 3 questions have transformed this community too. Is it true? Is it kind? Will it help? Amen, and blessed be.